Welcome to the Fedora Podcast. My name is Noah Chalai. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you. Joining me is my co-host, Mr. Eric, the IT guy. Welcome in, sir.
Well, howdy, Noah. How's it going?
I'm doing great. It's going to be an electrifying episode this week, Eric. We are excited as we embark on a thrilling exploration of Bazzite. Now, if you haven't heard of Bazzite, perhaps you have heard of this little tiny software project called Steam. And they made an effort to get Linux into the gaming sphere, and they've done a tremendous job. And since that time, Linux has become a first-class citizen on many of the different gaming platforms, and gaming developers are starting to take it seriously. And as a part of that, what we've seen is a variety of different hardware solutions and software solutions and all manner of different things to game on Linux. Bazzite is a project that uses all of the best parts of Linux to make a distro specifically for gaming. And we're going to uncover the impact. We're going to talk about its essence and what it has to do with Fedora. I'll give you a little clue. They built the whole thing on Fedora. That's how it works. It empowers the underlying thing. So it's super cool. So we're going to be excited as we discuss with Noel and Kyle the project Bazzite. To that end, let's welcome in our guests, both Kyle and Noel. Welcome in, gentlemen.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for making the time to be here on the Fedora Podcast. We appreciate having you. I want to start here. Can you help give us an introduction to Bazzite? If I stood in the elevator with the two of you and we were riding from, let's say, the first floor to the fifth floor, and you had 4 floors plus whatever the time being for the doors to open on the fifth, how would you explain Bazzite to me?
At its base, Bazzite is a ready-to-game Linux distro. So, if someone wants to play video games, Bazzite serves as a turnkey solution. You install it and you have everything you need ready to go out of the box. You don't have to do any tweaking. You don't have to do any crazy, installs for Lutris or Steam or Proton Plus or any number of other community-made tools. They are there. They're ready for you. You can just install your games and go.
I love it. I'm sold already.
Can you tell me a little bit of the backstory? How does one arrive at, I'm going to develop a distro specifically for games? And I ask that question because the vast majority of people that game, even the vast majority of people that game on Linux, take whatever distro they're already using and they just install Steam on it. And lazy, apathetic gamers that don't really do a whole lot of gaming, that just want an easy turnkey solution, look at Valve and say, what are they doing? And how can I imitate that? And so we get a certain amount of traction there, although there are some downsides. What is it that causes the two of you to say, here is the project we're going to dig in? If there was a thing we were going to work on our own time, on our own money, with our own resources, it would be a Linux gaming distro. Walk me through that conversation. How did that decision come to be?
Sure. I think I'll start. Noel, you're going to have a place in this too. I can't answer for everybody, but for me, it was by accident. You don't set out to do that. I certainly didn't. When SteamOS and the Steam Deck came out, I spent about a year in the Steam Deck Discord. It's unofficial, but they had a support section, and I would pop in there and help people. I had been using Silverblue on my desktop because I really liked the model, so I already knew a lot of the immutable gotchas that would later affect SteamOS. And in that year, I would help people like, hey, there is no package manager for SteamOS. You can't use Pacman to install stuff. You need to use Flatpak, or you need to use DistroBox. And, in that year, I kind of learned all the teething issues that SteamOS had. And later, through videos that George Castro posted when he was first starting Universal Blue, I found the OCI model of taking, Fedora's OSTree based images like Silverblue and Kinoite and making your own custom images from it. So Bazzite for me started as just a simple question like, okay, this exists. What would it take for me to port some of the SteamOS packages to Fedora's package format? So I did that, and it ended up not being, that hard to get a basic game mode session working or get some of these hardware support packages for the Steam Deck in there. And then it just kind of kept growing in scale and scope. It went from, okay, I have basic, SteamOS functionality on top of Fedora. Now, how can I make this better? I had that year of supporting SteamOS users under my belt. I knew what the problems were. How can I address them? What should it be pre-installed? What documentation needs to be written up for people, or what teething issues are people going to run into? And I just set out to solve as many of the problems as I could from there. And from there, it grew, right? So Noel, your turn. What made you decide to come to my Rinky Dink project and contribute to it?
Yeah, so I think for me, I've been looking for a long time for a project to contribute to, and gaming has been a lifelong passion of mine. And like one thing that I thought about, even just this morning, I thought about like 10 years ago, if you compare what the gaming landscape looked like on Linux in comparison to now, it is a completely night and day difference, of like all of the support that Valve has provided to the industry in order to be able to allow Linux to run and everything else. And I think like for me, it was just one of those things that it was a combination of passion and excitement for gaming and also my love of open source and Linux that really drew me to the project. And I think what's funny, I'll talk about the way in which that I got introduced to the project, Kyle, if you remember, is I saw that George and Kyle were playing Halo in the Discord, and I joined the Discord kind of at a distance. I was like, can I help people? Can I, because I'm not like a programmer or a coder or anything like that. Like I've done a fair amount now and learned a ton while I've been part of the project, but like, it's just kind of funny. I joined the voice call because I'm an extrovert, and that's what you do is you just join a random voice call and start talking to people. And I was like, yeah, like, how can I help with the project? Is there anything I can do? And they're like, well, we're playing Halo right now, but you can ask whatever questions you want. And they're like, do you want to join? And I'm like, sure, let's do that. And then it just kind of grew from there. I just found things that I was interested in working on doing. So
your passion for gaming led you to a call about gaming in which there was gaming to find out your potential involvement for gaming.
Yes.
Sensing a theme here.
That's very cool.
I'd like to turn this a little bit technical for a minute, just because we've hit on a few keywords that I'm really excited about right now in the space, and that's we've mentioned things like Silverblue, and of course the Fedora Atomic branding is back in full swing. And this is something that Fedora and RHEL and really the industry is looking at right now is this idea of an atomic distribution. So could you guys explain what that is exactly, and have we seen that in the industry somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, atomic as a concept is everywhere. It's huge, right? Even before Fedora did it, Chrome OS or SteamOS were kind of touching on this immutable root concept, or it's been in Linux servers for over a decade now. I think, where Fedora succeeds here is getting it on the Linux desktop in a very easy to digest manner. I think it's the best implementation of it, which is why, I was initially so excited when George's videos dropped. It's like, oh, I can do this better than SteamOS just because I know Fedora already does it better. It's great stuff. From an end user perspective, it's kind of just taking away the foot gun, if you will. You now have a system that is pre-configured, that works, that is very difficult to break. And even if you did, you can just roll back. Your changes are just layers on top of a known good working base image. I think that's really powerful. And I think it's going to drive Linux desktop adoption because it makes it easier for people to digest and work with.
And it, like, to add to that even too, like other examples are like Android. Like, as funny as that is, like, yes, it doesn't use OSTree. It uses like an AB root system, which it just kind of switches from one known good image to the other. But like, the difference is that what's nice is, yes, Android is open source, but there's a lot of Google sauce on there. For the difference with Bazzite is that it's completely open source, from top to bottom, besides, obviously some of like the end user apps, and stuff like that. But like, you have to make concessions where it's reasonable. And right now Steam is the leading platform, and that's, what we're going to support. So
right?
Do you think?
And just to add, we go to great lengths to say this. We do not consider Bazzite to be a distro. Bazzite is a custom image. Fedora is the distro. So, we're not official
Nice.
Fedora product, but no matter what, Bazzite is a recipe built on top of a known working Fedora image.
It's an amazing distinction.
It is. And here is, I guess, had you not said that, Kyle, I don't know that I would have drawn the distinction, but here's why I think your point is well taken and why I think it's actually really, really important. Do you know how many times I've come across a distro in which I thought to myself, man, the 1, 2, 3, 4 things, special things that distro is doing is really, really cool. I wish I didn't have to install an entire distro to get that thing. I just want that thing to be available. The distro I had was just fine. And I think the very wise call that y'all have made is by separating this out to say, hey, this is an image. It's a customized, immutable thing that you place that is based upon this distro. It does a couple of things. First of all, it alleviates you from all the technical stuff that you would have to maintain the distro. But then on top of that, my assumption is that it allows you to focus heavily on the customizations and the things that you want to do on Fedora, as opposed to the duplication of services to maintain another version of Fedora. Am I onto something, or am I missing what you're saying?
No, that's exactly right. Every single time we do a build, we grab whatever the current latest Silverblue or Kinoite are, and we add our changes on top of them. So my focus is purely the changes that I make. Very rarely do I need to step in and, roll back a package or something Fedora is shipping, maybe a kernel update. Otherwise, it's only my tweaks that I'm worried about. I save on having to worry about security patches. I save on having to worry about hardware support stuff outside of the handhelds I'm interested in. We get all of that directly from Fedora. And I think it's really powerful. To that end, too, part of the benefit of OSTree is if you're already running a Atomic Fedora variant, one command you can rebase to Bazzite. There's no need to reinstall.
That's actually how it started, too, actually. Like, before I joined the project, the only way to install Bazzite was actually to use that RPM OSTree command to change from a Silverblue or a Kinoite image over to Bazzite or any of the projects in the uBlue sphere. So the ISO stuff is actually fairly new. But yeah, that was just kind of something I was thinking about too, is how the project has changed over time.
So we're on the Fedora podcast. So if the arrows start coming in when I ask this question, forgive me, but why Fedora? Steam decides to base their immutable, so they're kind of attacking the same problem. They chose to solve it in kind of a similar way, but chose to base that on Arch. Obviously, there is NixOS. Obviously, there's a number of different paths you could have gone through. Is what I'm trying to say. Why Fedora?
That's a two-parter for me. Part one is Fedora as a distro. I've always enjoyed. I landed on it a long time ago. I never strayed. It's my favorite. And then outside of that bias of, I like this one, it's OSTree. Fedora is the only distro right now focusing on the OSTree concept. And I believe OSTree is going to be the future of the Linux desktop. So it's natural for me to land on Fedora when I'm saying, hey, I'm going to build something that makes this easier or better. Of course, I'm going to build it on the future.
Can you dig in a little bit more? What is OSTree? Maybe there's somebody that hasn't heard of it or isn't familiar with what Red Hat / Fedora is doing in the OSTree space. What is OSTree? How does it work? And how does it help you with Bazzite?
Sure, yeah. We could probably talk about this for hours, so I'll give the basic user standpoint. OSTree is this manager for your operating system images. It's part of how they're built, and it's part of how the end user manages it. And what it allows is, instead of updating individual packages, which, I think that's where most of the problems in Linux desktop come from, package dependency, I want to install this, but it needs 300 other things, and then this other thing breaks. Forget all that. Instead, every time you upgrade, you are upgrading to another complete functioning image of that OS with the newer packages built into it, newer drivers, newer kernel, whatever it may be. So every update's just chunking along to the next known good snapshot of everything functioning. And at any point, you can roll back to the previous. You can go back to one from 90 days ago. You can lock the one you're on now and stop updating. You have full control of that. The other benefit of OSTree, and this is a big part of why I think it's better than what SteamOS might offer you is layering. If you need a package that's not in the base image, you have the option to install it like you would in a traditional distro. And while that might open you up to those dependency problems, the beauty of it is you can just roll back, or that update will fail until the dependency problems are resolved. It doesn't actually break your system. And layering, gives the end user control to add things that we might have forgotten. Maybe they need some steering wheel that has force feedback drivers. No problem. You can layer that package. It'll just install it after every update to each new base image and work. So in short, to me, what OSTree offers is stability. It offers a baseline that will continue working on your system into the far future.
And to dig a little bit into the technical, sorry, Eric, but another thing to think about is that when we talk about this immutable base, about how you can't change anything about the image, OSTree allows you to be able to make changes. So that's a thing that just exists. And then the other thing to think about too is a lot of the common files that I make changes to or do in the system are in the Etsy directory, as a power user, and Etsy is fully writable. You can make any changes you want inside of Etsy. They will persist from image to image, So it's kind of one of those things where a lot of the tweaks and knobs and things that I need to touch on a day-to-day basis are available and changeable. So that's another powerful thing, in my opinion, about OSTree is just that capability of it's different, but it's not immutable, which is what a lot of people say.
And an important distinction to make there.
Very important.
And an important distinction to make there is that while it's still using RPMs under the hood, you're not interacting with, say, Yum or DNF to install packages. There's a different process, which actually kind of ties into a question Nate Lager in the audience asks about Bootsy. Sounds like you guys are doing some work with Bootsy. You want to talk a little bit about what that is and how Bazzite is making use of Bootsy?
Yeah. Right now, RPM OSTree is kind of the standard, for both layering packages and for updating the system. Bootsy is replacing it. So it's the same syntax. Instead of an RPM OSTree update, you'll do a Bootsy update, Bootsy rollback, that sort of thing. The only major change is now when installing a package, instead of RPM OSTree install, it's actually just DNF install. DNF takes over the layering. So that's a great change. That's not ready yet. It's coming. But you can do it right now in your container file build. So if you're doing a custom image, as of, I think, 3 months ago now, you can just start using DNF like you would in a traditional Fedora install.
Yep.
So think about this, Noah. You've got Lenovo's or something for your whole family because you all want to sit around over the holidays and game. And so you take your super powerful workstation, you spin up a Bootsy image of Bazzite, make sure everything is customized and tweaked just the way you want it. And then you're left with basically a container file as the product of that work. And then you can use that container file to deploy either via ISO or maybe USB image to all those Lenovo's. And then your entire family can have the exact same image running across all of your laptops. And you can all just be ready to go and game, which, as a lazy sysadmin, sounds great to me.
In all seriousness, when the Steam Deck first came out, my attitude was largely, why would I want a specific device just for doing gaming? I don't use my laptop, which I could repurpose for gaming. Why would I buy a specific device for gaming, right? And it was the egg is kind of on my own face because the reality is where I wouldn't pick up a laptop to go game because it would be like an hour, 2 hour onboarding process to install the things, get all the packages and get all the libraries, and I was not going to do it is really what it amounts to. And so having a dedicated device allows me to pick that up and just start. Bazzite. So I first heard about Bazzite. I met Noel, and I think Kyle, you were there too at Scale last year, right?
Yep.
We got together. So shortly thereafter, my kid had a gaming party in a LAN party in which we wanted to set all of these machines up. And I can't remember exactly how the timing worked out. It was either right before or right after we had done our paths had crossed. In any event, it was exactly the solution I'd been looking for. And in part of doing that had changed, it had taken things to where, okay, child wants to do a LAN party with 4, 5, 6 of their friends. Not doable, right? Because the amount of system administration time, like you pointed out, Eric, just the overhead is too much. Bazzite makes it approachable because it's now an appliance that can be plugged in to provide the opportunity to do a thing. And the concept of being able to dial everything in one time, get everything sorted out, and then scale horizontally, hugely appealing. Can you guys talk a little bit about upstreaming back to Fedora? So, we understand that Bazzite is this, not distro, but an image that allows you to do gaming. Does it benefit the Fedora community, or are you just kind of leeching off of them and we pull the Fedora down, we add some gaming stuff, and then we ship our thing out?
Yeah, we do our best to contribute back. I think there's more we can be doing. We have kernel patches that we're trying to get upstreamed and things like that. Sometimes that goes, above Fedora. We'll go to the actual Linux kernel to do these things, or we'll go to the packages Fedora pulls from. It really depends on the change. More directly, everything that I do for Bazzite, I build in Fedora Copper, and I do those all as separate repos. So even before Bazzite existed,
Wow.
I had a list of about 150 packages that I maintained in Copper. Those are still there. Bazzite pulls the same one. Any traditional Fedora user can go pull from them and have wallpaper engine or latency flex or any of the other number of things that I'm shipping in Bazzite on their system. And I'm fine with that, right? Like, the more I can give out or fix or patch for other people, the easier my job becomes, because it's one less thing for me to maintain when it's finally accepted by the wider community.
Do you think that the work that you guys are doing with Bazzite will extend beyond, and I'm not talking about the Fedora, the distro itself, but do you think that it will expand beyond that as far as people who are trying to accomplish similar things with gaming, or maybe it has nothing to do with gaming whatsoever? Maybe it's just somebody else out there says, hey, I want to do a very purpose specific distro thing. Man, look at the success and the great products that are coming out of what the Bazzite team is doing. I wonder if we could follow that similar model. Do you see you guys as kind of a template for other people to kind of build off of and or build their unique thing standing on your shoulders?
No, absolutely. That's what we're hoping for. You touched on why, Universal Blue exists. I don't think we talked about it much, but Bazzite is a member of the Universal Blue team. Universal Blue, their number one stated goal is to push the same technology that we're built on. So there are a number of different images under that. Another really great one is Bluefin, which is a developer-oriented version of the same concept instead of gamer-oriented. And, there's all kinds of different tooling, whether you want something YAML-based with Blue Build, or if you want to work directly with container files with our image template, that will allow you to take either Fedora images or our images and build from them even further. They are infinitely buildable or extendable.
Yeah, and to springboard off that a little bit too, like, the funny thing is I don't run Bazzite day to day on my desktop. I actually run my own image that is built on Bazzite. So like, I do run Bazzite, yes, but I also created my own container file from our image template, added all the changes and things that I wanted on there, because there are certain like sysadmin packages that I need in order to be able to do day-to-day work. But like, realistically speaking, it's like 99% of what I want is already there and is better configured than I could probably do it myself. So cool. I'm going to rely on, the group effort of doing all the things that, are more difficult, and then add the remaining small little configurations and changes that I need for my use case on my desktop. So I absolutely encourage people to create their own images, besides Bazzite, or build on Bazzite. If it's like perfect, but it's like 2 little knobs you need to change, then cool. Do a container file, build your image in GitHub. We have all the documentation information you would need to do that. Otherwise, like what Kyle said, if you don't like container files and you want to do everything in YAML, then use Blue Build. But that's absolutely the reason why, thing that we want to see more of,
Do both of you use Linux as your day-to-day drivers?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I have every piece of hardware in my house.
So somebody's listening to this and they're undoubtedly thinking, gentlemen, hey, that sounds super cool. I want to try Bazzite. So they might not be to null level to where they can take Bazzite, modify it for their daily use, and then continue to roll like a baller with an immutable distro. But how hard is it? What would you say the experience level requisite to get started with something like Bazzite is? Is it, hey, if I could install any distro, I could install Bazzite? Is it, no, you really want to have some experience with gaming and you kind of got to know your way around hardware and or distros? What does the on-ramp process look like for getting up and running with Bazzite?
My goal is to focus on people that have never used Linux. I think that's where the growth is, right? Linux has been 4% of the market for God knows how long now. Focusing on the average Windows user that has never touched this stuff and just wants a turnkey solution, that's your growth place. Yes. I'd like to think we're in a better place than Windows in that regard, in the sense that now if you install Bazzite, you're brought to a desktop, you have a software center, you have thousands of apps at your disposal. There's no going online and weird installers that don't clean themselves up or any of that stuff.
Or a vendor that decides that this operating system is going to be free forever, but surprise, we're charging you $29.95 for new updates.
For the updates to the operating system, we told you had to upgrade to that we stopped supporting right after we told you. Sorry, I got a little distracted there.
Yeah, and then the gaming stuff even goes beyond that, right? You're not getting a copy of Steam when you install Windows. You're not getting all these, nice driver tweaks or any of those other things pre-installed. You get that here.
Yeah, I think like out of the box, that is like, that has been the drum I've been beating this entire time that I joined the project. Because speaking of like ways to install it, how to get started, like, it was originally you install Fedora Silverblue or you install Fedora Kinoite, then you run this command, and anybody who you have open the terminal and looks at that command, like even I can't remember the syntax of the RPM OSTree rebase command, like off the top of my head. Like I've posted it hundreds of times, but like, no, I just can't be asked to remember that in my head. And so like, I think like ISOs and doing something that is a common like way in which that, people are used to installing, OSs, I think that was a good place to start. Like I'm hoping that we can make the user experience even easier. So it's literally one button click and you're done. I don't have any promises of how soon that will be or anything like that, but that would be like a dream of mine, is essentially like a 13-year-old kid could find Bazzite, follow the instructions, install it, no problem, they're done. Like that would be ideal.
Do you think we're getting to a point where the underlying technology of Linux is going to, if it hasn't already, because we might already be there, but if it hasn't already, the underlying technology of Linux is actually going to allow these sorts of products and services to surpass the experience on Windows, precisely for what y'all have just outlined? Where can I go buy a Windows computer that turns a Windows PC into a gaming appliance? It just simply doesn't exist, right? You're buying a Windows PC and then you're installing all those things. And we've just become so comfortable and so complacent with, well, I know how to install Steam and I know how to install my games and I know how to install the drivers. And so we think nothing of burning 7 hours to get all of the stuff back up and running. In fact, we find ways to work around, I'll put all my games on the drive, then I won't have to re-download all the content. We find ways to work around all those things. You are taking a very unique approach in that you are trying to make gaming appliances reproducible. Is that too far?
Yeah, it really depends on your use case. I think in a lot of ways, Linux has surpassed Windows already. A number of these gaming handhelds have had community-made benchmarks. Digital Foundry did this already in one of their videos, showing that installing Linux on those handhelds actually makes them run better. More frames, less latency, more flat frame times. And then from an end user perspective, I think already with Flatpak and, layering, that Linux on the desktop can in many ways surpass what Windows does. Are we there fully for all hardware? Absolutely not. But there's always more work to be done. And I think every day we get a little closer.
I think the Flat Hub change in particular, that if you guys saw, where they are basically looking at doing paid applications and kind of running as their own independent organization, like when I saw that, I was like, ooh, that's really cool, because that is like the App Store for Android, or iPhone, it's the model that people who aren't as savvy, with computers or don't want to spend the time to become savvy with specific things. Like, I think it's just super, super cool. Like that, these things that are built around it. And also, like, the other thing, which I don't want to get too off track, but like also seeing boot C as being a technology that is being, that was donated to the CNCF, is another really cool thing that, ultimately, like, if people want to build a Bazzite on Ubuntu or build a Bazzite on Arch Linux or want to build a Bazzite on whatever, it's like distros, like, yeah, the landscape has totally changed, and I think that that's a really cool thing, and that's a good thing. So
if I walked into a store, or if the four of us sat down and I were looking to purchase a piece of hardware for the express purpose of running Bazzite and having a gaming appliance, where would you point me to? Would you point me to one of the handhelds? Would you point me towards a custom built desktop? Is there a particular laptop what do you guys run, personally? What would you recommend?
In my case, I have a Steam Deck and a Legion Go that I run Bazzite on. I think it's great on both of them for different reasons. Steam Deck just because of the benefits of OSTree. Legion Go because it's better than Windows on that hardware, by all means. My desktop's custom built. That's always my go-to for desktops. I'm not a big pre-built guy. Laptop-wise, my money's on Framework. There's lots of great laptops out there, but if you really want a nice upgradable gaming laptop, get a Framework 16.
Yeah, I would heavily echo the sentiment for Framework. Unfortunately, I haven't picked one up myself, but like it's on the list. It'll get there at some point when I need to replace my laptop. Like I'll probably look at getting a Framework. I think the other cool thing to mention with Framework as well is that we have they have a page, basically, like if you go to frame.org/Linux. And you go there, there's actually a set of, recommended Linux, distros or images in our case, to be able to install on there. And it talks about like compatibility wise, what works out of the box and what doesn't. And so that, like, for me personally, like that's what I would recommend to somebody if they were like, hey, I need to get a gaming laptop. It's like, get a Framework 16 because we built and made sure that the hardware works, but I think, like, for me personally, I have a Steam Deck OLED. I think that that's a really great place to start. It's a really great handheld. It's what Kyle recommended me get. So there weren't many other options at the time, but like OLED's just very straightforward. I run Bazzite on there just because, it's got certain improvements. Yes. And I can. As far as like for my desktop, I just installed Bazzite on just AMD based hardware and a AMD graphics card. Nvidia can be a little bit of a challenge for sure, which we're not unique in that case. That's the fun part. Like it's kind of a group project that we've been trying to work on forever to try to fix. But I think Nvidia is starting to understand the value of open source more than they did. And I think it's, in my opinion, granted, we've been talking about this for 10 plus years, but like it's inevitable. It's only a matter of time, I think, until Nvidia hopefully just works right out of the box, just like an AMD card. So
sure. I'll add one thing to what Noel said. On the Steam Deck, right? If you are interested in Linux gaming and you want to financially benefit its future, just buy a Steam Deck. Valve has done a lot of work to make Proton better. They pushed HDR to the Linux desktop. I never thought that was going to happen as quickly as it did. Reward them for that. They're doing good work out there.
Well, this is the time to do it. This is the time to jump in, go all in on Linux, go all in on GPU builds, because I mean, look at Fedora Linux 41. There are the initial groundwork of easier interaction with NVIDIA based GPUs, and I think we'll see that even more so with Fedora Linux 42 coming out in about 8 months, and so I mean, now's the time to do it. if you're one of those people that is getting hit with this "you must upgrade or else" message from a specific vendor, maybe now is the time to ditch that second hard drive. I've dual booted for years because there's just always been that one AAA title or that one thing that doesn't work well with gaming on Linux. But to be honest, that's not nearly what it used to be. And let's face it, dealing with that other operating system is a pain in the butt, to the point where it's like, if this game doesn't run on Linux, maybe I can live without it. But now's the time. I mean, the hardware's there, the love for Linux is there, the driver support for on the Fedora side is there, and then you add on top of that something like Bazzite that just configures and deploys all that right out of the box. I don't have to install Steam. I don't have to configure the drivers. I just log in, download my games, and go. And as someone who works full time, that's fantastic. I don't want to tinker when I game. I just want to game.
You guys you heavily prefer AMD. I understand it. I get it. Can you talk about what some of the challenges are currently with it, with supporting an Nvidia GPU? The idea, of course, is noble that someday we would get to a point where it'd be as easy on one than the other. But as it sits today, what are some of the challenges y'all find yourself up against?
So Nvidia has a single problem, and it is their release model. They are closed source. They made changes recently, and a lot of members might be confused about this, to open source their driver. All that meant for them was the kernel module is now open source. All of the actual important stuff that's doing the rendering is just as closed as it ever was. Nothing actually got better, unfortunately. It's a little easier maybe if you're in the server world. So, it's a lack of control, right? We can do the work to pre-install the NVIDIA driver in the image. We can make sure any little tweaks are there and, hardware works out of the box. But if there's some bug like the one that affects GameScope right now, where loading into the GameScope session is just a garbled mess on that hardware, there's nothing we can do to fix that. We are completely beholden to NVIDIA and have to wait for them to put out a release that may or may not fix it. There's not even issue numbers for some of this stuff. So that's the number one challenge. Once you get past that, of course, and you have working drivers that are there, what we can do is just steer you toward what does work. Hey, yeah, you can't have game mode, but you can have a desktop. You can have Steam on there. Your games run. And for many people, that's good enough. That's kind of our focus right now. I think that will improve in the future, right? Because an open source kernel module could be used by NVK in Mesa, and that gets rid of all of the closed source components. It does mean no DLSS and no CUDA, which I'm sure people are going to be distraught about, but it does bring them to be on par with what AMD hardware can do on Linux today, which isn't a bad place to be, especially if it actually fixes these problems and puts it in community hands.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what the future holds for Bazzite? Sounds like you guys have a really solid start, but obviously neither one of you strike me as the kind of people that are ever happy. You always are trying to improve, make better what could be better. What does that look like? What kind of feedback are you getting from the people that use Bazzite? What would you like to see over the next year, over the next 5 years? Where would you like to be in 5 years?
Yeah. I think it's important to note, this isn't like a commercial venture. Bazzite is community first and will always remain open source. I'd say main thing is just trying to keep things as stable as we can, improve the user experience. So one of our main focuses right now is killing our Yafty, which is our portal first install utility, and building a newer, better, more friendly one, just so people who are really new to this have a nice platform with which to install, emulators or extra software for steering wheels, whatever they might need. Try to make that as nice as we can. I'd like to see some, more work on non-Steam games come out. Right now we use Lutris as our support for that, but there's tons of work to be done there. Glorious Eggroll, has this project called UMU, which is a Proton runner that kind of brings how Steam handles Proton outside of Steam. I think that's going to continue to grow and make this space better. And it's really only up from here.
We have had the egg roll on the show, and it was glorious. We'll link that episode in the show notes as well.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy. I met him at Scale, and it's just like yeah, he's super fun to hang out with, just brilliant. So yeah, no, and it's cool too, because like the other thing that we're going to continue to do is we're going to continue to work with other projects in the Linux gaming space as well. You know, speaking of Glorious Eggroll, like I don't know how many times Kyle and Glorious Eggroll have exchanged patches and ideas and thoughts of ways to improve the experience of both Nobara and Proton and Bazzite, and I think that's like what's super cool about being in the open source community is being able to work with others. Like they're not your, like a lot of people in the commercial world, they're your competitors, and like the thing is like, oh yeah, I mean, quote unquote, there are competitors, but they are also like much more just a community driven thing where it's like they want to do things slightly differently, and that's okay. Like, but we're all trying to solve a similar problem that we're all having that we would like to solve. So that's definitely one thing. Talking about more contribution upstream to Fedora, that's definitely something that's in the works. That I've been talking with folks in the Fedora project about how we could improve just out of the box gaming experience on Fedora. So eventually, like a lot of the stuff that we do, hopefully in Bazzite, not all, but hopefully a lot of it could exist already upstream as, like a boot C, like starter image, and then whatever somebody could basically build on top of, to create their own Bazzite or their own thing. And so like, that's something that I've been thinking about, behind the scenes and stuff like that too. I don't have much to comment on because it's kind of very early stages right now, but sure, it's something that, I'm really excited to try to be more involved with. And then the other thing that we've been really playing around with, and this is like in the UBlue as well as the Bazzite world, is systemd systems extensions, which, is something that actually like Red Hat is even looking at too, and Fedora as ways in which to be able to make that layering process simpler and easier. So like, for example, like having to layer an entire RPM for a VPN package is kind of ridiculous, a little silly. Like, yeah, maybe you could have a Flatpak that already works out of the box that provides you what you need for the VPN. But a lot of times, like a lot of these VPN providers are like, no, we're giving you an RPM and that's that. Like, it would be awfully nice to just basically have like a systems extension that I don't have to reboot my computer in order to install my RPM or my RPM for my VPN. I just enable the systems extension and I'm done, and now it works. So like that's something that is still very early days, but we're always trying to find ways to improve the user experience in Bazzite. That has been my main focus since day one. Like, and I think that for me is just, something we're going to continue to do.
Yeah. When Noel says enable the system extension, I think he makes it a little more complicated than it is. What he means is drop a file in a folder. It really is that simple.
Yeah. It's simpler when you say it that way.
Yeah. Yep. More like a portable executable, I guess, on a Windows machine, if you want to make that comparison, I guess.
Even better than that, because it can make changes to the base system. Systemd is amazing, and the work they're doing directly benefits the Linux desktop, so they deserve all the praise.
One of the things that I think people are, there's going to be somebody that's listening and they're going to say to themselves, man, what these guys are doing is just super cool. I want to get involved. Now, maybe there isn't an upcoming Halo tournament that you could party crash into the phone call, but there's got to be a way. I mean, you guys are probably looking for help. You'd love to spread the Linux joy and the gaming joy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If people are looking to contribute, kind of the beauty of this model is 100% of this is built on GitHub. Even our websites are on GitHub. So anybody can just pop in and make any contributions they like. We're always accepting new ones, and we're always going to be friendly to you. I mean, even if we say no to your contribution, we're probably going to say thanks in the same sentence.
Yeah, I think that's like the big thing is GitHub for code contributions or documentation or website contributions, as Kyle said. Joining the Discord is how I got involved in the project. Like we are, our Discord has grown a lot. Like More than I ever thought would ever be in there, to be honest. Like, it's a little overwhelming at times. And so there's a lot of new people with a lot of questions, just that have never used Linux before. And I think that's the beauty of our community, is that there's a lot of, preconceptions that get thrown out the window. It's like, I'm brand new to this. I don't have the 10, 20 plus years of experience of administrating a Linux or, Linux desktop or server. Like, I just need help getting my game running. And like, the more people that we can have that, have an understanding of the technical, but as well as just are passionate about helping people, I think that's so great to have, is just, so yeah. Oh, the invite expired. I will get a new one right now. Hold on.
Add one more to that. Even just opening issues is huge for us.
Yes.
I had one user open an issue that was just, hey, your virtual memory settings could be better, and wrote up this whole document on why they could be better and how they might tweak them. And I still go back and reference that issue, even though it's closed, because that information was so helpful and so thorough.
Huh.
Actually,
the Discord is, how did you guys land on Discord? If you don't mind taking kind of a side tangent, but is it just that's prevalent in the gaming world, and so if we're making a distro based on gaming, it's just kind of the natural choice, or was there more intentionality that went into it?
Yeah, nail and head, right? Like a lot of Linux spaces are hard to get into because they'll use lesser known tools. Nothing wrong with that, but if you're trying to appeal to mass market, sometimes you go with the greater of two evils.
I see what you did there. I'm picking up what you're laying down. Anything else to add, gentlemen, before we wrap up?
I don't have anything in particular. I am so appreciative of being invited on, to the Fedora podcast. It's been a real pleasure. And I look forward to meeting anybody who is planning on going to the Scale conference next year in March. Kyle and I will both be there. So feel free, if you run into us, where, I'd like to say we're friendly people, but yeah, like, it would be really nice to meet some of the folks that are using Bazzite or using Universal Blue or any of the things that we work on. It's everything that we do, like, we wouldn't exist without the community and with the people that use it. So, like I said, very, very appreciative of being part of the show today.
Wow, we appreciate having you. So you're going to be at Scale coming up in March. Are there any other conferences that you're planning on attending, or where people can meet up with you?
I would love to be able to go to Flock. I think that is still very much in the works right now. Last I heard, it's in Brno, which I'll have to figure out if I can fly to Europe during that time. So I would love to be there. There are other like local conferences that I like to try to show up at. So if you're in the Minnesota area, I like to show up to a conference called Minibar, which is just a little small one. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, I would love to go to more community Linux conferences, but as everybody, life is what it is, it gets busy. I mean, I would love to go to every single one, but
That's cool. So you and I will have to represent the North Midwest well, and if there's other people in that area, they can.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Kyle, how about you? Are you a conference goer?
I am, yeah. I will definitely be at this year's Scale. I'm not sure where I might or might not be after that, but I will make announcements in our Discord as those plans solidify.
Very
and then
good.
I just want to add, huge thanks to everyone in the Linux gaming space. Bazzite is built on the shoulders of giants as far as I'm concerned. So thank you to the Fedora project for the wonderful base. Thank you to Valve for SteamOS and pushing that. Thank you to the Chimera OS team. We still use their GameScope session, and it's great working with that team. And thanks to Nobara, in many ways, they're kind of like the original Bazzite, a Fedora gaming-based distro. I'm glad we're in a position where, we can all be friends and share, and I just hope to keep up that collaboration.
Very good. Noel, Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate having you on the Fedora Podcast. We'll get you back on the program soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for having us.
And that will bring us to the end. I thank you for joining us. This was episode 43 of the Fedora Podcast. Hey, if you are watching and or listening on the backside, make sure to check out the show notes. The show notes, we're going to find additional resources pertaining to the episode. So on behalf of Kyle, on behalf of Noel, on behalf of Eric and myself and the entire Fedora project community, we'll see you back the Fedora Podcast next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.